Chilling tales for dark nights.
A few weeks after starting my freshman year of college, I got introduced to the drag community. I had always been familiar with drag queens, RuPaul's Drag Race, Rocky Horror, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I know and love all of them. But it wasn't until I went to my first gay bar that I found out the community wasn't purely queens. As it turns out, there are also drag kings. Women who wear beards, packers, and perform as hyper-masculine dudes. This discovery was revolutionary. I'm a cis woman, but I've always been incredibly in touch with my masculine side. It wasn't long before I bought a binder, shaved my hair, learned how to don a beard, and come up with a name and persona for myself. Fast forward a month or so, and I've recently started doing solo shows in my city, as well as in surrounding ones. It's been a wonderful experience. I get tipped in money, drinks, and sex to dress up and perform as a man. I really couldn't ask for a better role in the LGBT community. But all of that changed a week ago. I had just finished a show in the town about an hour away from where I live, and I had to step outside for a cigarette. It was around 2:30 a.m., and there wasn't anyone else in the alley outside the club. I planned to just smoke one and go back inside, but the air was crisp, cool, and I really didn't want to go back into that muggy club just yet. I was scrolling through my phone when I heard a noise down the alley in the dark. A sharp, muffled crack. I froze, pocketing my phone and flicking the butt of my cigarette to the ground. Whatever the noise was, it had come from a spot just out of view of the lights around the club. I was ready to haul my ass back inside when I heard another crack, even louder than the first. And this one was followed by a gasp and a low moan. Now, I know what you're thinking. Go back inside, you dumbass. You obviously shouldn't go in the direction of creepy noises. But I hated the thought that someone could be in trouble and that I would just ignore it. So in the direction of the sound I went. Just past the pool of illumination cast by the club lights, I could see that the alley took a sharp right about 50 feet ahead of me. There was a streetlight somewhere beyond the corner, and a hazy shroud of rotten yellow light cast long shadows along the buildings. Whatever the sounds were, the source was right past that corner. I could hear more gasps and muffled moans as I crept closer. As I reached the curve in the alley, I hesitated. What if I was just about to interrupt a pair of drunk idiots fucking in an alley at 3 in the morning? Ugh. Like the pussy I was, I spun around and prepared to walk back to the club, when a voice echoed through the alley and sent shivers down my spine. Don't go. Every muscle in my body froze involuntarily. Was I hearing things? I hadn't even rounded the corner. There was no way anyone standing beyond it could have known I was there. But as I looked over my shoulder, I heard the voice again. Please, don't go. In the span of about 15 seconds, I came up with 2 options. 1, I would go and help whoever was in trouble and beat their attacker's face in. 2, I would still go and help whoever was in trouble, get murdered, and not have to pay for any student loans. So with every ounce of courage I could muster, I clenched my jaw and strode around the corner to see what the hell was going on. It was the biggest mistake I could have made. There, silhouetted by the harsh glow of the streetlight, was a woman. No, I realized, looking at her masculine frame. A drag queen. She was disturbingly skinny and enormously tall, bordering on 6'6" or 6'7", and that was only enhanced by the platform stilettos she was wearing. An off-white leotard was cinched around her gaunt frame, stained with God knows what. But it was her pose that made my voice freeze in my throat. She was hunched over, knees together, and both of her skeletal-looking arms were intertwined in a jaggedly unnatural angle, over her head. Her head that I numbly acknowledged as being twisted completely upside down on her neck. She stood like this for several seconds, just staring at me, before her mouth stretched into an inhumanly wide grin. "Don't leave me," she whispered, and began to twist herself further. I watched in silent horror as the sickening, all-too-familiar cracks punctuated the night air. Her stringy blonde hair hid her face as it rotated in stuttering clicks back to an upright position. Her back arched, arms twisting together and running down her spine. It was like watching a contortionist, but the thick, wet, crackling noises that filled the alley made it obvious that her body wasn't supposed to be doing any of the things it was. I took a step back from her, prepared to yell for help. The moment my foot touched the ground, her head snapped up and her jaw fell open. A ghastly, animalistic shriek, loud enough to shred any human vocal cords, ripped through the night air. In the span of 2 or 3 seconds, she spun around on one foot and bent over completely backwards, her arms still twisted together, her legs not separating. Her head lolled limply on her neck as she sped toward me in a horrifyingly fast crab walk. I screamed, turned, and sprinted back up the alley, to the club. By the time I stopped, heaving and trembling with fright under the neon lights, she was gone. The butt of the cigarette I had flicked to the ground earlier hadn't even gone out yet. Without hesitating, I rushed back inside, pushing my way through the pulsing crowd of dancing drunks to the back room of the club. I practically burst through the dressing room door, startling the few queens who were getting ready. I could hear them asking what was wrong, but I couldn't register the words they were saying. And as the adrenaline wore off, I slumped to the floor and started to cry. I haven't told anyone what I saw that night. Even now I try to tell myself that it was some kind of nightmare, but I know that I was fully awake and sober throughout the whole ordeal. It took me 3 or 4 days to be able to sleep properly again, and even then my dreams were always harshly interrupted by images of that horrible smile or the crackling of splintering bone. In any other case, my story would end here. But something happened last night that made the whole situation so much worse. Even now as I type this, I can feel goosebumps rising on my arms. Victor, one of the other kings I perform with, was telling me about this new queen who was trying to get into the local scene and wanted to meet me. He said her name was Onyx something, I can't quite remember. What I do remember was the moment he handed me her card. I took one look at her face and flung it down as if it had burned my hand. My ears were numb to his concern as I stared silently at the thing, now laying on the ground. Gazing up at me was the same queen I saw in the alley. And she had that same wide, ghastly smile.
Chilling tales for dark nights.